Great. Cool. All right. So just to repeat again, um, if you have any questions at any point, I would like you to please speak up immediately. When I ask for any thoughts or questions, just blurt things out and we'll work out, who's talking which in job or, in work order later. So I want this to be communicative with people talking. Okay. So we're here to talk about compression and rise and fall. So this applies mainly to smooth standard dances. And the one that we'll be using primarily today is smooth waltz, just because that's awfully easy. Let's see here. I'm looking around at the faces on the screen, and I am seeing people who are bronze at this point. Am I correct? Is anyone here a newcomer? Okay, that's great. Oh, is that? Ah, it's Sam. Oh, it's been forever, Sam. Hi, Sam. Great. Okay, cool. That makes my job easy. So, can anyone tell me what they think is the primary purpose of compression or of rise and fall in the smooth standard dances? Any thoughts? How about from Aleph?
Getting the energy from the floor and using it effectively to move.
That's a really good answer, yes. So compression and rise and fall really allows us to put power and energy into our dance and really move ourselves over the floor. I would say that is the primary purpose of compression specifically. Can anyone tell me what a use of rise and fall is as differentiated from compression? How about Daranius? No? Darius and Anna? Nothing over there?
Sorry, we didn't hear that.
Do you have any thoughts on what the purpose of rise and fall is as differentiated from compression? Okay, that's fine. So I would say that a major purpose of rise and fall is as actually a balancing agent, and as an agent that sets up compressions for us, and as a method of creating elegant motion in dances and partnership connection. So we can't really go into the partnership connection elements of this right now, but we can go into several of the other elements. So I would like to start off by talking a little bit about different kinds of rise, and then we're going to be going over a practice of that kind of stuff. Then we'll talk about compression and practice that up, and then we can talk about how these apply to individual dances themselves. So before I get going, I'm going to try to offer individualized feedback to people as they, and there is a Cassandra here. Hello, Cassandra.
Hello, I am not, in fact, Robert Newton, but I'm here. I don't know if Ben let you know what happened, but I was running a few minutes late, so he went and got everything started for me.
Yes, so we've gone through the introduction, and I was just about to tell people that because there are two of us here, myself and Cassandra, both of whom are on our significant others' laptops, we will be trying to give feedback to individuals while we go through practice runs. So if you are comfortable with receiving that kind of feedback, please, like right now, send a individual message to myself and to Cassandra and just say like, yo, please hit me up with those good criticisms and comments. I'll leave a minute for you guys to feverishly type stuff in there. Do 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 do. Yes. All right, great. So I'm getting those messages rolling in. So I'm going to leave another minute or two for that. Perfect. All right. So I'm loving these messages, by the way. You guys are hilarious. I miss you all, by the way. Okay. All right. So let's get going on this.
Are we supposed to be putting something in the chat?
If you want feedback, tell Cassandra and Shannon, that you would like feedback.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yes. This is so that we don't accidentally call out people who don't feel comfortable with it. It's harder to read a room when you aren't in the room.
That's
All right.
okay. That's a fair point. Okay.
So without further ado, let's go over some positions for what different kinds of rise are. So to get started, we're going to first talk about the major 3 types of rise that we experience in smooth standard dances. The first type of rise is called foot rise, and this is nothing more than the flexion of our ankle joint, okay? So you can think of this as doing calf raises, more or less. When we're doing foot rise, it is important for us to think about how we are keeping our toes flat to the floor. So at none of these times am I going up onto point, okay? Point is a horrible thing that does not appear in ballroom dancing, okay? So please do not go on point when you're doing foot rise. Again, I'm moving my weight from my foot onto the ball of my foot, and then elevating myself on the ball of my foot, okay? The second type of rise, and I'll move the camera up a little bit for that, is what we call leg rise. So this is going to be focusing on our knee joint, okay? So if I have negative knee rise, if I'm lowered in my leg rise, then I have bent legs, or I can have leg rise, and therefore I'm straightening my legs. So this is, probably a pretty obvious concept here, where we can bend and straighten our knees to experience leg rise. Cassandra will be talking a little bit later about how we can bend our knees and not, move in like weird directions and not stick out our tuchus, but we'll accomplish that later on. For right now, we'll think of it as simply the movement of our knees from a bent position to a straightened position. When we talk about leg rise, the most important concept to keep in mind is that we do not lock out our legs when we go through the process of leg rise. So let me take a look at that again. My legs are currently in a bent position. Yes? Yes, of course they are. When I straighten my legs, I stop my straightening at a slight angle. And that slight angle is a soft knee position. If I were to lock out my legs, they get into this very straight position that is more conducive to Latin than it is to smooth standard. So I always stop my leg rise just slightly before my knees lock out. And this is something that will take fairly extensive practice to get right, because the easiest position to move to in leg rise is a locked position, but that is not the easiest position to move out of. So we keep our legs soft in leg rise so that we can move effectively out of it. And the final type of rise that I want to talk about is called body rise. So body rise is perhaps the least visually apparent of all of them. It is an elongation or compression of the spine along a vertical axis. So many of you may have heard Norm talk previously about a center of gravity and a center of levitation. So when we talk about the center of gravity, you can put that pretty much anywhere from your belly button down. For the sake of argument right now, I'm going to stick that at my belly button, just for the sake of argument. That will be off a little bit, but it's the sake of argument, that's my belly button. My center of levitation, I'm going to put that at my sternum. So if you take your chest and you take your pecs, they're massive muscles, and you go directly between them, then that's where your sternum is. And it's like a big bony patch that's not very flexible on most of us, hopefully. And what we want to do is we want to imagine that we are either compressing our sternum and our belly button down towards each other, so we're shortening our spine, or we're lengthening our spine, okay? So we have either body rise, where we're imagining a lengthening of ourselves into the ground and up to our ceiling through our spine, or we're taking out that elongation. The question that most people have when they hear about body rise is, hey, what the heck? Aren't you always supposed to be stretching up and out your spine in every which way possible? And the answer is absolutely yes. So when we have a good solid frame and a straightened spine, that is entirely independent of our body rise. Posture is not related to body rise. So let me explain that again. When I am elongating my spine, so when I'm getting into frame, what do? First off, I square my shoulders, I straighten my neck, all this good stuff, and I have my balanced position. You're all bronze now, you know how to stand up straight. When you do that, you end up in a nice neutral position. And that is very easily considered to be a nice straight, maybe even a stretched position. But there is a fundamental difference between taking like a neutrally stretched position and stretching it further, or taking a neutrally stretched position and taking it down a little bit. Okay, and then maybe clenching your abs a little bit more, bring things downward. That's the difference I'm talking about. I'm not talking about going from a good position to a hunched position to a flexed position. I'm only talking about maybe stretching a little bit more or a little bit less within the realm of good posture. Okay, so that is fast and furious what the 3 types of rise are. Let's think a little bit about how they can apply to the box basic in American Smooth. So here's what I'm going to do. Should I control that screen down just a little bit more? All right. Can everyone see my feet? Perfect. All right. So what I want you guys to do is please get up, and we will walk through this very slowly. I would like everyone to start with their weight on their right foot. Okay, now, let's see, who looks eager? Is Rowan in the room? I'd love to pick on Rowan. Rowan, are you there? Great. Rowan, when you start this box basic, what would you say your, and your weight on your right foot, what would you say that your right knee is doing? Is it straight? Is it bent?
Straight but not locked, so like a little bit bent.
Good. That's actually a pretty nice answer. So if we're starting for like flat neutral, we're going to have our right leg be just a little bit bent and softened. Good answer. Okay, now, as we begin to take our step, there's going to be a compression period that Cassandra is going to go over later. But for right now, we can simplify it by saying we're going to have a softening further of our right knee as we take out our leg rise. So we've started from a slightly soft position on our right knee, and we've lowered. We're now going to step forward onto our left foot, and that is the beat of 1. Now, on this step forward, I've arrived in a position where my left leg is bent. My left knee, let me smooth so you can see this, my left knee is bent and lowered. Okay? I step forward, and my left knee is now lowered. This is, again, a position where I do not have any leg rise. On the beat of 2, I'm going to start my foot, my right foot over to the side. And this is an interesting position here. Can anyone tell me what my right foot has right now before I even put any weight onto it in terms of the rise of my right leg? Anyone at all? This is a super bonus question, particularly because you can't see me very well. All right, so my right leg has no leg rise, but it does have foot rise. So you can see that maybe more from the side. Shannon, can you see it more from the side on the video?
And then angle a little bit. Yeah.
Great. So if I were to lock my knee, that would be a locked knee, but my knee is soft. If I were to have a flat foot, I'd be down there, but I have foot rise. So I'm on the ball of my right foot, but my right leg is soft. Does that make sense? Okay. So I've put my foot out to the side on the ball of my right foot with a soft right knee. And now as I step onto that foot, what I do is I maintain my foot rise and I start to accentuate my leg rise. So I start to straighten my legs up. Again, I do not lock my legs at any moment, but I stretch them upwards so that I can have some more leg rise. When I switch my weight to the ball of my left foot, I first remove my foot rise by lowering onto my heel of my left foot, and then this is the position we started from originally. From what Rowan said, we have a soft left knee, and I may now lower and take out the leg rise from my left foot as I move on to my next step. All right, did that make sense to everyone? That was kind of a lot to throw at you all at once. I'm gonna pause here, and I would encourage any questions before I go through it again. Any questions? Wow, I'm not that good a teacher. Cassandra, do you have a point?
No, I was just waiting to see if anyone did have any questions.
Okay, great. Then I'm gonna walk through it one more time, and then we want to see you guys do it so we can see how this is going. Okay, so starting off again, I'm on my right foot and my right knee is soft, as Rowan has said. Okay, I'm going to first take out my right leg rise, so I'm going to lower slightly. I step forward onto my left foot. My left knee is now quite soft. I move my right foot over to the side, and I have foot rise, but no leg rise in my right leg. I step onto my right leg, and I gain foot rise and leg rise while I'm in the up position. And then I take out first foot rise and then leg rise as I prepare to step off again. Okay, let me see you guys do just that much. And we are going to think about how this is going, and I'm going to add on another element. So I would like you guys to practice this a little bit, and we're going to see how it goes. So just practice on your own time, and we will watch carefully like hawks. All right, give it a shot, folks. Okay, I'm seeing a common stumbling block for a few of you, so I'm going to comment on this real quick. So this is a problem that I had when I was bronze back in the day, which was, of course, years and years and years ago, 2 years ago. And was it just 2 years? Whatever. So there is this analogy. Let's say that you want to take a telephone pole and you want to get it from lying down on the ground, and you want to get it put upright, okay? Now, let's just say you just have you, just you. A really hard way to do that is to find like a raised clump of earth. Take your telephone pole, put one end of it up on that point of earth, and like heave it upward while you're down here pushing up on it. That's really hard. An easier thing to do is to find a ditch. Put your pole into that ditch and then you don't have as far up to raise it. So this is like a really complex way of saying that when you are taking the step onto your right foot, you need to make extra certain that you do not have early leg rise. Let me elaborate on that. So we started from a lower position. We've retained a lowered position, no leg rise here. Here I have foot rise, but no leg rise. What I was seeing several people doing was having more of a straight right leg here. And then what they were doing is trying to get onto this foot, and they were quite unstable because they were like lifting themselves onto a raised position. What I would like you guys to try doing is transferring yourself over onto this foot, and only on the latter half or latter portion of this transfer do I want you to start to introduce leg rise to the equation. So the way that we can practice that very first is to introduce no leg rise whatsoever. So I'm going to transfer from this position right here onto my other foot, and I've maintained a lowered stance through the entire period, okay? I maintained a lowered stance. My knees are still very soft. Now, as I make that transfer, when I reach perhaps about here, I will start to straighten my right leg and achieve leg rise. Now this makes me feel a whole lot more stable while I'm going through this portion of the step, because I am over my foot when I start to lift up instead of lifting onto something that I'm not on top of yet. Cassandra, would you agree with this?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I want to add a few points that are related to what you were talking about. So I think a lot of people, in my opinion, were having difficulty balancing on the two for the reasons that Ben previously described. And I have a couple more things that I'd like to add here. So when you're doing your leg rise, so as Ben mentioned, on the one, you're going to have no leg rise here. And then as you send your leg out to the side, you're still going to be in a very compressed position, in this case on my right leg. And then as you transfer weight onto your free leg on the two, you want to make sure that your toe is actually very turned in. So I saw some people trying to have their toe kind of like perpendicular to the floor and trying to transfer weight on it, and it's really hard to do it that way. So you want your toe to be turned in. Like in Latin, the inside edge of your foot is going to be on the floor. And then you're going to simultaneously push off of your standing leg and pull your weight onto your new leg, like this. So as you start to transfer weight, your rise is going to be the same. And then as you finish transferring weight, that's when you're going to remove that leg rise.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, inside edge of foot is an excellent point there. Can we see you guys try to practice that again? We'll see if there are any other things we can pick out right away. So, get up, have your exercise for the day. Let's see what's happening. Okay, I would say this is actually looking better. Wouldn't you, Cassandra?
It looks like people are starting to understand what you need to do, but it looks like, from what I'm seeing, people are still having a little bit of difficulty balancing on the two.
Agreed. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also, yes. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening on the 2. Who would like to share an issue that they might think that they're having, or a question that they have? I know there's a question out there. Go on, Darius. You know you want to ask a question. No? Okay. Well, in that case, Lauren, do you have a question?
I did. I was gonna say, should we be like incorporating sway? Would that help? Is that a thing that's relevant here?
That is a relevant factor. Cassandra, do we want to work that into this workshop?
Personally, I don't think that that's something you should be trying to do in just box steps. There isn't really much swing or sway in that. And most people at this level, most people in this workshop, I would say that's not appropriate to talk about too much right now.
Yeah. But yes, for the higher level folks here, some sway will help you to balance a little bit there. Let me actually talk a little bit about a lowering action on the 3 and I think might help stabilize people as they're coming out of that rise. Okay, so in this box step, what I want people to focus a little bit more on is that when we're up in this raised position, I want you to, after you've transferred your weight onto your your left leg, I need you to first compress down through your ankle so you lose your foot rise. And then I want you to compress a little bit more through your leg before you even consider stepping out again. I'm seeing a lot of people who are coming down nicely on their foot, but their leg is still very flat when they go to take another step. I would like you to continue that lowering process, and that's actually going to help stabilize you. Because we are more stable the lower we are to the ground until we die, in which case that's not a very stable position at all. Keep that in mind. But more to the point, I think that I want to talk a little bit about timing in specifically the waltz box step, because that's what we're on right now. Can anyone tell me the timing that you use for rise and fall in the waltz box step? Does anyone want to walk us through that timing? I see a hand being raised from no one. You're making me pick someone at random, aren't you? Elizabeth, didn't you recently become one of our dance mentors? Would you like to show us some timing? What's up?
Don't mind us. We were
Okay.
on mute and I got called out.
All right, that's fine. Okay, well, I'll walk us through that. So, what we're gonna do, as we talked about previously, is we're lowered initially. We take our first step forward, and we arrive lowered on 1. We put our foot up to the side. We get our weight onto it, and we're risen on 2. Sorry, what am I doing? Yes, 1, 2. On 2, we are risen. On 3, on 2, my weight is still my right foot. On 3, I make the transfer of weight to my left foot. And I'm still risen on 3, you'll note. And on the and of 3 and, I will lower my foot rise. 3 and my leg rise will lower perhaps slightly after that. So maybe on the 3 and So 3 and 1. This is an important differentiation that you folks will find particularly useful as you move into bronze and into high bronze. I see a lot of bronze finals being populated almost exclusively by people who can start to differentiate their waltz box timing for rise and fall. Cassandra, what on earth would I want to delay my fall when I am doing the waltz box step? Does it have anything to do with our next topic?
In fact, it does. Would you like me to start talking about that now?
I think so. Does anyone want us to stick around this a little bit longer, or can we move on?
I mean,
think we can.
I could use another 3 hours of this topic probably of this practice.
Yeah,
It is a lot.
it's a lot.
There's plenty in here that you can practice on your own as well. So I think now I'm going to talk a little bit about our next topic that Ben alluded to, which is going to be compression. So has anyone here heard the term compression before? I know Dallas and I tend to use it a lot. Some people. All right, we got a lot of hands in the rowing club. That's good. All right, so what I mean by compression, so you all can see me. So what it means to compress is essentially to bend at 3 different joints. So you're going to be bending at your ankles, bending at your knees, and bending at your hips. And the way that you're going to do this is basically feel like you're sending your tailbone straight down into the floor. So you can see here that my ankles are strongly flexed, my knees are bent, and my hips are also a little bit more bent than if I was standing directly upright. Now, some important things to note here are to make sure that you maintain proper posture as you're compressing. So one common error that I'll see with people frequently is to send their hips a little bit too far back, almost like they're doing a squat or something like that. And you can probably see how this makes it difficult if you're trying to dance in body contact with a partner. You can't really dance effectively if your hips are that far back. So again, you want to make sure that your hips go straight down. So the way that I kind of like to think about this, going back to what Ben was talking about with center of gravity and center of levitation, you want to feel like your center of gravity is really pulling down and simultaneously feeling like you're being pulled upward from the sternum. So there's this opposition of these two forces kind of pulling in different directions. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about how you'll compress on both forward and backward steps. So as I'm talking about this, I want everyone to kind of get up and walk through it with me a little bit. So first we're going to talk about forward steps and then backward steps, and then we'll wrap that into the waltz box step. All right, so for forward steps. So in general, in standard and smooth, you want your weight to be more toward the center of your foot. And when you're taking forward steps, it's actually going to start a little bit further back than that. So a little bit more toward your heel, actually. So you're going to first lower by, again, bending your ankles, knees, and hips. And then once you have started to lower, you're going to feel your body weight starting to go forward a little bit. So your weight is going to rock a little bit from more toward the back of your foot toward the front of your foot. So practice that a little bit. And this is a really important aspect because this is what actually enables you to push off of your standing leg effectively. If your weight is all the way back on your heel and you try to take a step without sending your weight forward, it's really hard to do it with control, and it's really hard to take a large step. So again, you're going to be bent here, feel your body weight start to go forward, and then in this case, we'll just say we're taking a step with a heel lead. You're going to extend your foot forward, and then push off of your standing leg and simultaneously pull onto your front leg in order to get your weight over that foot. Again, you want to end in this compressed position as well. All right, so I want everyone to just try taking a few steps forward like that. So you're going to compress, send your weight forward, and step. Try that just a few times. So compress, send your weight forward, and then step.
So Cassandra, it looks as though some folks are having some trouble with their balance while they're doing this. It looks as though they're almost falling forward. What is a common cause makes people fall forwards when they're in a compressed position?
I guess I'm not really sure what you're getting at with that question. Do you know the answer to the question?
Yeah. So it looks as though a lot of people are having their butts stick out behind them. And what that's doing is making your spine tilt forward. And that forward tilt of your spine is making you fall forward. So let's see here. Heather, can I use you as a demo? Not that you're doing this, but because I want to make you do this and not do this. Great. Okay, so get back up to your position. And what I'd like you to do is when you compress, I would like you to have your back stay straight, but end up tilted forward so we can see how that looks. Great. So everyone saw there how what just happened is you've all been to newcomer comps. You know that that is exactly how newcomer waltz looks. So the way that we avoid that, as Cassandra was saying, is that we need to flex at the hip more. So when you move your upper body in a tilted direction, what you're doing is minimizing the amount that your hip joint needs to flex, okay? Because you're effectively making that flexion happen in your spine instead. So if you can instead flex your hip joint more, and by that I mean make your hip joint flex more, then you can keep your back straighter as you compress, instead of leaning more forward as we go through this. Does that make sense for anyone?
Do it again.
Yes. So as we compress, if I let my hip flex a lot, then the flexion will be taken up by the leg. If I keep my hip joint rather stationary, then I will, okay, I'm actually entirely wrong with this, but I will maintain that I'm right in this, because when my hip joint flexes uncomfortably, it will lead to a movement of my spine forwards. Whereas if I keep that motion in my hip joint isolated to my hip, then my spine will be able to move up and down independently without rotating forwards or backwards or tilting as much.
So I think what I would like to see from everyone before we move forward is I'd like everyone to turn to a side view and just practice basically getting into and out of a compressed position. Some people are kind of already doing it. So practicing bending, sending your hips straight down into the floor, like Ben and I have been talking about, and then rising up. So you want to feel like your spine is essentially like moving up and down on a pole the whole time. So just try that a little bit, and we're going to take a little look.
I have a question.
Heather, was that you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. How do you, when you're getting just into that compressed position, how do you, like, I guess, have your hips like just go straight down without letting your weight be solely on your toes? Like I feel like my ankles feel like they just want to be my weight on my foot. I mean, being a little bit in between. I don't know.
Okay, so you started to cut out a little bit, but toward the end, were you saying basically you're having issues with having your weight be too far toward your toes if you send your hips straight down? Yeah, okay. Let me see what might cause that, because I've never experienced that myself. Ben, do you have any insights on this?
Yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from. So while you're lowering, I think that your heels are coming off of the ground. So I would suggest that you try limbering up your heels, because you are able to send your weight straight down and have your knees just go forward. But I think that what's happening is that you're lifting up your heels early. So let's see here. When we're going through the compression, it is very easy to roll onto our toes, or even feel as though we have to roll onto our toes as we compress. But I think that for me, what I'm trying to do is not just bring my spine towards the ground, because that can be, that ground over there. I'm also trying to think about bringing my hips down towards my heels, okay? So when I bring my hips down towards my heels, and my heels stay down the floor, there is no requirement for my toes to even be on the floor. I can pick my toes off of the floor and still compress, although it becomes much harder because I'm not flexible. Does that partially answer your question, Heather?
Yes.
Amazing.
All right. One thing I'd like to add on that, and Ben, you kind of like prompted me remembering this after you started answering it, was that's a very common issue in people who aren't very flexible in their hamstrings. So if you don't have a lot of flexibility in your hamstrings, you're not going to physically be able to keep your heels on the ground because it really stretches the back of your calf here. So that's something that if you're like physically not able to do that, I would try to work on your hamstring flexibility. But it could be other things not related to flexibility as well. All right, so with that in mind, I think that is starting to look better from people. So now what I am going to go ahead and do is we're going to talk a little bit about how this works with backward steps, and then we're going to talk about it with the waltz box step and kind of put everything together. So going back to what we were talking about before, taking backward steps has a lot of the same principles as taking forward steps does. So again, basically any time before you step from this compressed position, you're going to want to bend your knees, bend your ankles, and bend your hips. So just like before we took a step forward, we're going to get into this position first. But then now you actually want your weight to be a little bit more toward your toes. And the reason for that is if your weight is toward your heels, you're just going to fall back onto your back foot and you're not going to be able to get as large of a step as you want. So you're going to compress. Your weight is going to be a little bit more toward your toes this time. And then you're going to start to extend your back leg. Then you're going to compress a little bit more as you send your leg back. And then just like we did with the forward step, you're going to simultaneously feel like you're pushing off of your standing leg and then pulling onto your free leg. Ending again in this compressed position. And now one thing here that I want to just make sure to mention as well, I feel like I emphasize this in probably like every workshop or lesson I teach in some way, but you want to make sure that you engage your core when you're doing this. So if you don't engage your core as you're going backwards, you're just going to fall off balance and most likely be thrown back. So if you do engage your core, that's going to enable you to pull your foot back in a nice controlled straight line. So I really feel it right here as I'm kind of passing through this split weight position and then pulling my foot in. And that is the same for forward steps as well. So if you're compressing and stepping forward, really feel like you are engaging your core starting as you pass through that split weight position and then as you collect your leg in. And that should help with balance. All right, so since we're going to try to get through some of the other stuff a little bit quickly, I'm going to quickly talk about how this applies to waltz box steps and give you a bit of time to practice. So waltz box steps are basically a combination of forward steps, side steps, backward steps, and I guess together steps, if you want to call them that. So we've already talked about both forward steps and back steps. And really the principles of compression in the other steps are the same. So I'm going to go through that and then give you guys a chance to practice it. All right, so I'm going to start by taking a step forward on my right foot. So I'd like everyone to get up and just follow along with me as I'm doing this. So, as I've said, the first thing that you want to do is compress even before you take a step. And then you're going to step forward onto your right foot using the same principles that we just talked about. Now, one important thing here is that you will stay in this compressed position as you send your leg to the side. So one common error with lower level dancers is they'll step forward and then basically like rise up kind of off of their standing leg like this. So you want to maintain this compressed position, and for the first part of your step to the side, you really want to feel like you're only moving sideways. You don't want to feel like you're moving up yet. So you should feel like a very strong compression in your right leg here. Your right quad should be really activated. And then you're going to transfer that onto your left foot. So now we're going to be in a similar compressed position, but now my heel should be off the ground, if you can see this. So my heel is off the ground, but my left leg is still strongly bent. And then now you want to feel like you're squeezing your thighs together. And as you do that, you're going to get to this position here, where you have both foot rise and leg rise on the 3. So Ben alluded to this before. Dallas and I like to refer to this as a standard straight position. You might have heard us say that. And then back up a little bit. All right, so then we're here on the 3. And then as Ben said before, we are going to start by lowering our heels. So at this point, we have no foot rise, but we still have leg rise. And then you're going to send your knees forward. So that order of events is very important, because if you try to do it the opposite way, if you try to bend your knees without putting your heels down, it makes it very clunky to go into the next step, and you're going to lose your balance. So I'm going to quickly go over the back half of that. So we just did 1, 2, 3. So then now everyone should have their weight on the right foot, and we're ready to step backward with the left foot. So you're going to step backward here. And again, you want to stay in this compressed position before you take the step to the side. I'm going to turn to face you guys now. So stay in this compressed position. Now your left quad should feel really activated. And then again, you're going to just kind of transfer your weight directly sideways onto the toe of your right foot. And then squeeze your thighs together to pull up like this. Then we're going to lower our heels, and then we're going to bend our knees. And then you can repeat that. So that was a very, very detailed explanation. There's definitely a lot for you guys to practice. But do you have any immediate questions before you give it a shot?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I might be remembering how to do a box step wrong from the lessons, but I think I was taught to do it the other way, where you go forward on your left and then back on your right.
It doesn't matter. Do them either.
Okay.
Yeah. No one really actually does box steps in competition anyways. It's more just an exercise.
Yeah, so Josh, what you were taught is the leader's side, and that is a perfectly legitimate way of doing it. But you, as a leader, you can also do them with the other foot going forward. So they can be done in both directions.
All right. So I think, Ben, what do you think about trying this without music versus with music?
Well, I think that people are doing pretty well, and I'd love to see how they do with music.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull up a song on Spotify. So for those of you who are at our other workshop, we found a better way to do this that doesn't require me to share my full screen. So it should just share the audio, but we still can't really talk during it. So we're just gonna let you guys dance it to music for a few minutes and then give you feedback at the end. All right, I'm gonna get that going. Don't know how to work Dallas's laptop. Let's see.
Also, I just want to comment that I'm loving House Ballroom over in Rowan's laptop. The group dynamic is quite the squad you got going on there. I love it.
All right, I should be sharing my computer sound now. I'm gonna go ahead and start. All right, nice job, everyone. So we're gonna go over just a few common things that we saw from pretty much everyone. So the main two errors that Ben and I noticed, we've kind of talked about these a little bit already. It'll take a little while to fix them, but I just want to reiterate them. So what I'm seeing from a lot of people is rising a bit too abruptly on the 2. So what this looks like is something like 1, 2, 3. And this is potentially caused by several things, but one of which is not having enough of a bend in your knee as you transfer your weight onto your side step on the 2. So even though you put your foot out to the side almost straight, you don't want to maintain it at that level of straightness the whole time. That's not going to make for a very controlled step. So as you transfer weight onto it, you're going to gradually bend your knee more and more. And then you're going to rise. It's a lot harder to do this way, which is why a lot of people rise a little bit too quickly on the 2 when they first learn waltz. So it'll just take a little bit of time to develop the control and inner thigh strength to bring your legs together there. And then Ben, would you like to talk about the last point?
Yes. So the last point we had was that a lot of you are you're lowering not enough before the 1. So you're doing almost all of you are doing a very nice job of taking out your foot rise before the 1, but not much of the leg rise. So let's look at that for a second. The camera. All right, so you're doing a very nice job of, as you step to the side, you take out the foot rise very nicely, but I'm not seeing many people taking out the knee rise as well and really getting in that compression that Cassandra talked about before you step off onto the next 1, okay? So a lot of this, to be honest with you, is caused more or less by muscle fatigue and the fact that it's hard to actually get into a good compressed position. I know I don't want to exercise either. So actually that's not true, I do desperately. Pooped up in the office, tell me out. So as we lower and we get this compression in, we have to really think about almost doing a squat into this compression and make it a very conscious effort to make sure that we get in that compression before we move forward. If we do not enter into that compressed position, then our entire basic from that point onward will be too risen and we will be off balance for the entire step. So very much keep in mind that we need to compress at the end of the lowering period.
Ben, what muscles do you say we should be activating to make stronger so we can do this easier?
Quads, for sure. For
Yeah,
any,
quads and calves, actually.
yeah. Calves for the risen position and quads for any compressed position.
Yeah, I start off every day by doing a bunch of calf raises while carrying weights. It's good stuff to do, and not difficult to just do like 5 minutes of calf raises in the morning.
There's a reason that Dallas and I posted those videos of basically just like calf raise exercises. They're
Yeah.
very for standard and smooth.
Yeah, and quads are equally important. What's a good quad exercise, Cassandra?
Any type of like squat or lunge. Yeah. So you can just do body weight squats. I think I did some of these in some of the warm up videos. So not confuse this with the position that you'll be in when you are compressing, because your hips will go back a little bit more. Or also just body weight lunges like this are surprisingly tiring. They're really good exercise for quads if you don't have equipment.
Yeah, those help a lot. And getting into dance shape is a definite thing. And dancing gets a lot easier after you have the musculature built up to support your body weight.
All right, that's a good question though, Josh. I think, so what I would propose doing now is just ending with a brief discussion of rise and fall in different dances. Since we started a little bit late, we can go a few minutes past 7 if you're okay with that.
First up, Lauren, did you have a question?
Yeah, so like, you know, when you're learning to squat, they say don't let your knees go past your toes. But it seems like the compression stance is pretty much this is going to hurt your knees stance.
It's not that this is going to hurt your knee stance, but your knees do definitely want to go past your toes. You want to actively think actually of pulling your knees forward. And that's why it's kind of difficult for me to recommend doing squats, because it's kind of the opposite position that you really want in compression type positions. So it's a little bit hard to distinguish that, but yeah, you want your knees to come forward when you're compressing in standard.
And Lauren, I would say the saving grace there is that in dance compression, we're not going super deep. We're not doing massively strenuous stuff. We're just going like a few inches down. So it's not the same leverage that you'd have when you're doing actual body weight full squats.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, like, when you're doing compression, how much do you want to go down? Like, how do you measure how much bend you want in your knees?
It's a tough question to answer, but I would say in general, your compression is going to be directly proportional to the amount that you're moving.
And your partner.
And your partner. So it's something, you and your partner need to be on the same page about it. So if you are not able to fully control taking large steps and being in like a split weight position when your legs are really far apart, you don't want to compress as much. But in general, I would say it's hard to say you're doing too much compression in dance. I don't know if I've ever seen any like low level dancer get to that point. So generally you probably want to do more.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good question.
So how about, as we close out, how about we talk a little bit about how rise and fall differs between different smooth standard dance styles. So today we focused entirely on smooth waltz. Does anyone want to tell me their thoughts on what might be different if we had talked about tango or quick step or foxtrot or Viennese waltz? Anyone have any thoughts on any of those dances?
I know tango. See, I learned this from Dancing with the Stars, that there's no rise and fall in tango. So it's different in that regards. So you're pretty much always in somewhat of a compressed, right? Are you always in the compressed position?
Yes. So in tango, we have the interesting factor that we never, let's see if I can say this correctly, we do not experience simultaneous foot and leg rise. I think I can say that. And we very rarely experience leg rise. Cassandra, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think in most cases in tango, you're going to be taking steps onto a flat foot. So for example, if you take international standard tango, you do progressive link, you basically put your entire foot on the ground right away. And that's kind of a general rule for both international and American tango.
And also, if you do have foot rise in tango, it'll typically be when your weight is not on that foot. What can people tell me about, oh, I don't know, foxtrot? What is foxtrot? Nobody here has danced foxtrot. Ooh, Rowan, do you have a suggestion for me? I know Rowan just volunteered. You have to unmute yourself now.
I don't. You just said who knows foxtrot. There you go.
Well, what can you guys tell me about patterns of rise and fall or characteristic rise and fall in foxtrot? Four of you can brainstorm this.
Oh, we're on music, aren't we?
Yeah, thanks.
I don't remember what foxtrot is.
Oh, it's. I don't even remember.
I couldn't hear any of that.
You meeting?
Oh,
I'm gonna mute us while we figure this out.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, does anyone else have an answer for that question while they think?
Real stumper.
Well,
Final exam material.
So I think it's a little bit more clear what the difference between, say, international foxtrot and international waltz is. How do those dances look different to you guys?
Most of us haven't done international foxtrot yet.
So you've seen international foxtrot, have you not?
They're on a different count.
That's
Yeah.
true. You're not wrong.
we have an answer.
All right, go ahead.
So the first two are slow, so each slow is 2 beats. And those slows are more in compression. And then over the 2 quicks, those are each like 1 beat. And you go up into rise there, and at the end of that last quick, you compress again to repeat the pattern.
That's correct. And I think that what you're getting towards, which I'll just run with this ball, is that foxtrot is characterized by a lot more compressed movement. So whereas waltz is a dance that experiences a lot of vertical movement and a lot of nice vertical rising and falling, foxtrot is a dance that typically, speeds across the floor like a crawling fox or something on its underbelly. So foxtrot is characterized by a lot of compressed stances and long steps that allow foxtrot to move across the floor very quickly with less of a vertical rising component. In fact, most steps in foxtrot will not contain a lot of simultaneous foot and leg rise, I would say. They're definitely in there, but they're not a primary component.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I think the difference, like I said before, between, say, international foxtrot and either American or international waltz kind of makes this abundantly clear since, all right, most of you have at least seen international foxtrot, but if you even take like a feather and 3-step, I'm gonna go ahead and just demonstrate this really small. It's all about just moving across the floor without really straightening your knees that much. And you're going to experience probably a higher proportion of expressing your rise through body rise than through leg rise.
Yes, that's exactly correct. This is something that Norm emphasizes quite a lot, if any of you have ever been to his international foxtrot lessons, that for the follower side explicitly, or specifically, body rise is a major component in the back steps. And this is because we want to get a lot of travel without having a lot of actual vertical movement. So you're exactly, I 100% agree with you, Cassandra, on that one. Does anyone have anything to say on what's left here? We have quick step.
I think quickstep has similar vertical rise to waltz. Like there's a lot, there's definitely more vertical rise than there is in Foxtrot, and it's definitely faster as well. And I think you're taking travels more like Foxtrot as well a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I like that answer. I think I would generally characterize Quickstep as being kind of somewhere in between Waltz and Foxtrot. So you get a lot of that really like traveling across the floor from Foxtrot, so a lot of that kind of horizontal movement, but then you still have a pretty strong vertical component as well, which is more similar to Waltz. And I think this is especially noticeable in syllabus Quickstep. Like if you just take a Quickstep basic, you're still going to have a pretty strong compression here, like you would in Waltz, for example.
I would say that, oh, sorry, did I just cut you off, Cassandra?
Oh, I was just going to say, go ahead.
Oh, so I would say that for me, what differentiates the rise and fall pattern in Quickstep from Waltz is actually just how they're linked together. So for me, in Waltz, you have a compression for 2 of the steps, and you have a rising period, then you have immediately a falling period again as you move forward. Whereas in Quickstep, you can have several lowering periods and several rising periods right next to each other, which allows for movement in all of those periods. So you can be up on your toes for an extended chassé sequence, for instance, or down and compressed for maybe a longer run sequence. And what this means is that you get more travel than you do in Waltz while still maintaining a pretty dramatic rise and fall section. So that's what Quickstep looks like to me, at least. Does anyone here have anything to say about Viennese Waltz?
It's Waltz, but just really fast.
You're wrong. But I appreciate the interaction. Elizabeth?
V-Waltz only has compression, no rise.
All right, I said Elizabeth, but okay.
Yeah, there's not a lot of rise and fall here. Just the same, like the same level.
Yeah, I'm really happy with both Elizabeth and I think that was Sam's answer. So a common misconception for people first learning Viennese Waltz is that, a common misconception for people who first learn Viennese Waltz is that the rise and fall pattern is the same as Waltz. So they try to rise just as much as they would in Waltz. And you do not have time for that. That's gonna make your Viennese Waltz very out of control. So one kind of hot take that I have is that Viennese Waltz rise and fall is actually very similar to tango in a lot of ways. You are actually going to have some amount of rise and fall, but there's a lot of taking steps kind of more flat-footed. Let me see if I can demonstrate this. So if I just do like the forward half of a reverse turn here, I'm gonna step on my left foot, I'm gonna step on the inside edge of my right foot, but my heel is gonna come down almost right away, like very similar to stepping with a flat foot in tango. And then I'm gonna cross my foot over with very little body rise or leg rise.
So similar to tango, as I mentioned previously, in Viennese Waltz, there will also not be many periods when you have simultaneous foot and leg rise. So as Cassandra just showed, she was compressed on her legs, and then she had foot rise but no leg rise, and then she had none of either. And that is also characteristic of tango, so I very much agree with that description.
All right, I think that pretty much covers all the dances. So,
does any?
Sorry, your microphone went a little bit crazy.
Rowan, what are you gonna say?
It was just a startle reflex to your mic going crazy.
Okay. All right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and call it there.
Can I catch one last thing?
All right, we're not going to call it there, sure.
There was a lot that you threw at us in the last hour. What are the main things you want us to take with us to practice and to remember as we go about our life?
I would say that the big takeaway that I would want you to take away is that there is such a thing as foot rise, such a thing as leg rise, and such a thing as body rise, and such a thing as compression. And I would like you to further take away the knowledge that you should be able to almost reason out for yourself where they should fall in each step, based on what you've seen, and based on what allows you to balance successfully. So I would encourage you to try to go through some steps that you know and think about how rise and fall affect those steps and what timing they can be used in during those steps. So obviously we can't go through every step here, but these are tools you can apply literally everywhere.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. So the point of this workshop was basically to introduce you guys to a bunch of different concepts and essentially serve as a case study for how you can apply them to different steps. And now what we hope is that you have the tools to start kind of figuring out, okay, what should the rise and fall pattern be for steps in different dances? Where should I be compressing? And we hope that you're able to kind of start to generalize that to other contexts.
Great.
Right. Good.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'm all set.
All right, I think, well, thank you all for coming. We're gonna go ahead and call it there. Thank you all for dealing with us with the technical difficulties, and we'll see you later. Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.